just to give you a quick sense about my background, I started out with a technical background. I was a double E major. And my first job actually out of school was doing nuclear submarine design, which was a cool job. In hindsight, it was just really, really technical product management. But I had never worked in product management. Then I came out here to go to business school. I learned about this awesome career called product management. I said, that's what I want to do. I had never worked in software before. So I asked people, where's the best place to learn product management? And they said Intuit. So I was fortunate to get a job at Intuit. I worked there for several years as a leader. And then as soon as I worked in product management, I realized, oh my gosh, UX design is really, really important, right? I could write these great PRDs, but then we could fall down in design. So I made it a point to learn a lot about UX design. There's a whole chapter in UX design in the book, so I think it's a good thing for PMs to know. And also, I've been coding since I was a kid. I just didn't know how to code web stuff, so I went back to school and studied a bunch of different web programming languages. So I try to stay technical as well. And that's like a lot of people here in the Valley, I want to do my own startup, so I did that. So I've had that experience as well. YourVersion was a personalized news startup. And then since then, I've been consulting and helping companies for 9 years now. Some of my clients are Usendit, Box, and Microsoft. And I'm a big believer in sharing best practices in product management. So for 4 years now, I've been running a monthly speaker series down in Palo Alto, Mountain View, called Lean Product Silicon Valley. My Twitter handle's at Dan Olsen, and I post all my slides and videos at my website, dan-olsen.com. So let's jump in. My talk today is about product market fit. This is a term that's pretty popular these days. It got made popular by the Lean Startup movement, right? It was actually coined by Mark Andreessen of Netscape fame back in 2007 in a blog post that was titled The Only Thing That Matters. So the interesting thing is anytime you have a big movement like Lean Startup, there are all these buzzwords like MVP and pivot and product market fit. MVP is probably the poster child for where there's the most debate and disagreement about what it means. I've seen people have like very difficult arguments and debates. Product market fit, people talk about more simplistically, like, oh, Box succeeded because Box had product market fit. Startup A, sadly, they failed because they did not have product market fit. People talk about it like this true or false state of existence. And as I mentioned, having worked in product management for a while and having an engineering background, I was like, you know what, I kind of see a pattern coming together, what it means to have product market fit. So that's what I'm going to share with you today in the time that we have. But I want to share an example, story of a time where it didn't really go so well, basically. We went out and we talked to customers, and this is how they described what they wanted to us. The product manager on the team, that's how he envisioned what the product should be. That's what actually the alpha version was. So there's a couple problems with the alpha version, but we fixed it in the beta. It's okay. We totally fixed it. By the beta, it was fine. This is what the marketing team advertised to the public. This is what was actually ready on the original launch date that we were shooting for. This is what the press had to say about our product. And this is what the customer actually wanted at the very beginning, right? So anyway, it's just a little funny cartoon to illustrate all the things that can go wrong. It's like this telephone game. You're trying to understand customer needs and communicate that to the designers and the developers, and so that the thing that comes out the end of the factory line is what they actually want. So that's what my book basically is about. It's a guide on how to achieve product market fit. It's a lot of the Amazon reviews say it's a great book to read after Lean Startup because it actually tells you how to do it. That's why it's called the Playbook. I'm actually happy to give away 2 copies here today. You're probably wondering, how do I win? You just tweet. So just tweet with @Dan Olsen. You can throw in the ProductCon hashtag, product management hashtag, something like that. I'll pick 2 of the tweets and I'll give them out later on. So I have an engineering background. I didn't like that that there wasn't good guidance on product market fit. And as I said, after working on so many different companies and so many different products, I realized that there was this framework and a set of conditions that need to hold true. And so I created the framework called the Product Market Fit Pyramid, and it's a central framework in the book. So I want to walk you through it real quick. It's a pyramid that consists of 5 layers. The bottom 2 layers are the market layers. And the bottommost layer, the foundation of the pyramid, is your target customer. Whose life are we trying to make better? Who are we trying to create value for, right? Everything starts there. And like a true pyramid, each layer builds on top of the other layer. So if we suddenly change the customer we're going after, the whole pyramid could come down and we might have to start over again. The second layer up is underserved needs. For that customer, what are their underserved needs? We want to focus on customer needs, and I'll talk a little bit about what is underserved needs and how do we address that. But basically, if they're already happy and fully satisfied with how a need's being met, we don't want to target those, right? And if you take these 2 together, that's the market, right? If you look in economics or marketing textbook, it'll say the definition of a market is it's a group of people that share a set of common needs. So that's the market. And you don't actually control the market. You can pick the one you want to go after, but you don't actually control it. What you control are the product layer decisions, the top 3 layers that I like to represent as your value proposition, which hopefully builds on that next layer, which is, hey, what are the needs that we're actually going to claim to customers that our product solves for them, right? And more importantly, how are we going to do so in a way that's better and different than other products that are out there? The next layer up is feature set, What's the functionality that actually is going to convey those benefits to the user? And that's where the MVP concept comes in, so we don't overbuild, so we don't go too far before we've confirmed we're going in the right direction. And then finally, the user experience. That's what brings the functionality to life. That's what the user engages with, right? And a way to think about this is, you need to get each of these 5, you can view these as like the 5 key hypotheses you need to get right enough to have product market fit. So if you're clear enough and right enough about who your target customer is and what their needs are and what your value prop is, what your feature set is, what your UX is, then you've achieved product market fit, basically. And once I had this framework, I realized, hey, I can create a process around this to guide people through making, refining, and iterating these hypotheses. And so that's the lean product process. And basically, product market fit in this model just means, hey, how well are all the decisions and execution you're doing in the top layers, how well do they resonate with the market that you're going after, right? And so the lean product process, you just start at the bottom and work your way up. So the first step is getting clear on your hypotheses about your target customer. Next, what do we think their underserved needs are? After that, how we think we're going to be better or different? What should our feature set be? What's our UX design? And when you get to that last step, there's just a 6th step. I'm a big believer, actually, if you think about it, say you're working on a brand new product, and you've got this prototype of your new product. That prototype represents all the assumptions and hypotheses you made along the way, right? And so the last step is to take that prototype, or if you have a live product, and go close the loop and get feedback from customers on it. And that's how you see where you're at with product market fit. So in 25 minutes, I don't have time to go through all 6 steps. I'm going to focus on the 3 that I consider the most important. And there's other books about how to do UX design and how to do user testing. I cover that in my book too, but I want to focus on these 3 because I think these 3 steps are really what product managers, their specialty is, right? Building the product, that's development. Designing the product, that's designers. It's our job to really understand customers, their needs, and what our product strategy is. So let's jump into the first step, which is determining your target customer. Right? And I should mention, you can apply this process. Obviously, if it's a V1 product, you can apply this process. You can also use it at the feature level. Say you have an existing product and you're building a new feature, you can use it for that feature. And even if you have, say, a V2 or a V3 product, you can apply it. You can also apply it on a product where you just haven't applied some of these techniques. You're going to find ways to add customer value. But say you were doing it on a V1 product. I just want to acknowledge that we're starting with a blank slate. It's like, who's my target customer? You may not have a good idea. I just want to acknowledge that. It's okay to start out with a rough tentative hypothesis because we're going to iterate and improve it. Steps 1 and 2 are so closely related that as you get out and talk to customers and understand their needs, you're going to revise step 1. But I want to share why it's so important, right? A lot of times in product management when we're defining customers or products, you get answers that sound good, but they're really not that deep. And I think of an onion, like the outer layer of an onion, and you have to peel it, or you can peel it to get deeper layers. I was judging a competition the other day, and I was applying my framework, and I went up to one of the startup teams, and I said, who's your target customer? And they said to me, millennials. And my first reaction was, okay, cool, they know who their target customer is, that's specific. But then I took a step back, I'm like, wait, there are millions of millennials in the world. How specific is that really, right? So that happens all the time where you get an answer, like here's the customer need, but it's really not at the level of detail you need to achieve product market fit, right? And their product had to do with preparing food at home, like a Blue Apron. They could have easily said, instead of millennials, oh, it's for millennials who aspire to cook at home. That would have been a better definition, right? But let me show you why it's so important. And even if you're talking about a high-level need that a lot of people have, the second you look through the eyes of a particular target customer or persona, you'll see that the detailed needs are quite different, even though they share that high-level need. So let's talk about a need that a lot of us have for transportation, within 100 miles of our home, to get to work, to get to school, to get to the store, whatever it is, right? That's a need that a lot of us have. But let's look at it through the lens of 2 different customers. On the one hand, let's look at it through soccer mom lens. On the other hand, a speed demon lens, right? They both have that high-level need. But say I went out and did 20 customer discovery interviews with soccer moms and said, hey, can you tell me what's important when it comes to transportation for you? I might hear things like, well, I'm carrying all my children and their friends and all their athletic gear, so the car's got to be big enough to hold all that stuff. I'm driving my children around. They're the most important thing in the world to me, so safety's on my mind. And I'm doing a lot of driving, a lot of miles, so it would be great to not spend as much on gas, right? Those might be things that we hear. If we talk to 20 speed demons, we probably wouldn't hear any of those things. We'd hear things like, well, it's important that the car goes really fast, and that it looks cool, and most importantly, that I look cool when I'm driving down the street in the car. And you end up with very different products as a result that achieve product market fit. And I like bringing up the car industry because think of all the different types of cars that are on the road. There are so many different types, Scions, Coopers, trucks, SUVs, right? They've done a really good job of kind of micro-segmentation and coming up with products that meet that. So again, peel the onion on your target customer. And then once you have a tentative hypothesis, you can move to step 2, which is identifying what their underserved needs are. And an important concept here when you're talking about needs is the idea of problem space versus solution space. Who's heard of problem space before? All right, a few people, that's good. So you hear more and more people talking about it. I want to illustrate this concept. So problem space is basically a customer problem, customer need, or customer benefit that the product should address. Right? So if you have a well-written product requirement, or earlier Keaton was talking about a well-written user story, as a blank, I want a blank so I can blank, that format is in the problem space. In contrast, solution space is a specific implementation or design that's intended to address that requirement. So if I said, you know what, I want to create a way to make it easier for people to share photos with their friends, that statement, make it easy for people to share photos with their friends, would be in the problem space. If the next thing I said is, oh yeah, and last month I created an iOS app that does that, that iOS app would be in the solution space. Or if I had a designer friend, I said, yeah, my friend Bill created this awesome set of mock-ups for the app, those mock-ups would be in the solution space, right? So the idea is we want to separate problem space and solution space. I think good PMs do that. And too often, many product teams just go barreling right into solution space. They start designing and building. They haven't thought about the customer or what the needs are, right? And we want to kind of stop and think about the problem space before we go in there. The example I like to use to illustrate this is when NASA, back in the day, when they were sending astronauts into space, they knew that the ballpoint pens that we use here on Earth that rely on gravity wouldn't work because there's no gravity up there, right? And it wasn't NASA. If you Google this, you'll end up on Snopes, and it'll say it's all an urban legend. The key point of contention is, did NASA do it? It wasn't NASA, and NASA didn't ask them to do it, but there was a contractor of NASA called Fisher, and the head of that company said, you know what, I think I can invent a pen that'll write in space. And he spent $1 million in R&D back in the 60s, a lot of money, a lot of time and effort, and he invented a space pen. So you can actually get one, they write in space, they work without gravity, it's great. Right? Faced with the same challenge, the Russians gave their astronauts pencils. You can actually buy a Russian space pen. It's a cheeky joke poking fun at them in a box, just a pencil in a box, red pencil in a box, right? So why do I share this example? A few reasons. One, obviously, if these are both equally good solutions to the problem, then the one that didn't take $1 million and all that time and effort is better, higher ROI, right? That's the obvious lesson. The second thing is, even when you're trying to stay in the problem space, it's so easy to have solution-based thinking creep in. And I call it solution pollution. You get solution pollution. So when the guy said, hey, I think I can invent a pen that writes in space, he had some solution pollution in his requirement. What was it? What was it? Pen. Yeah, he baked in the solution in the problem, right? It would have been better if he'd been vague and just said, hey, a way to write in space. That would have been better. And we can do even better than that. And how does this play out on feature teams? The way this plays out on feature teams is a JIRA ticket says, add a drop-down, add a wizard, add a configurator. Drop-down, wizard configurator. Are those problems or needs? No, those are solutions, right? So the technique to get people to bridge back and get clear on the problem space is to use the 5 whys technique. It's like, oh, well, why do you want to add a drop-down? Oh, well, we need to give the user a way to specify their shipping address. Okay, let's write the user story that way. And maybe a drop-down is the best way, but maybe it's not. And at least that way, everyone on the team is clear on why we're doing it, right? So the 5 whys is a way to get a technique to get people back if they're in the solution space, right? Let's share an example that's closer to software. So I mentioned I used to work at Intuit. On Quicken, TurboTax is another big product of ours. We've got problem space on the left, solution space on the right. And what the idea is we want to map across, right? So TurboTax, software product, so it's in the solution space. This is about the time of year when people start firing up. Who's using TurboTax or used it before? A lot of people, right? In the United States, you got to do your taxes, right? So it's a solution. It competes with another software product, TaxCut, right? For those of you that said you use it, please yell out loud. Like, what is it? What's the customer benefit or problem that it solves for you? What do you like about it? Saves time. What? Cheap, okay. Saves time, saves money. What else? Easy to use. What else? Saves the return from year to year. Yeah? What one? Helps pay your taxes. Cool. Keeps you out of jail. That's a good benefit. That's a good benefit. Yeah. Those of you who've been in jail, you know that's not good. Yeah. All right, cool. So exactly, so that's the idea. So look at that. So like within less than 30 seconds, I got like 6 different answers. That's the thing about the problem space. It's super messy, right? Customers are not robots. They're not going to spit out the same ASCII string as to why they like their product, right? They may fundamentally value different things, saving time versus money. They may use different words. Someone may be talking very specifically about, I love how it does Schedule D. Someone else may be up at the high level saying, I like how it makes me not worry about things, right? So it's basically, again, an onion all over again. At the high level, if I had to describe the onion and what's the market that we're in, it's something like help me prepare my taxes, help me do my taxes. But that's like saying millennials. As a PM team, that's not actionable enough to deliver product market fit. This is actually the fun part in the process where you and your team can do brainstorming and divergent thinking and try to come up with what are all the different ways we can help people with their taxes, right? This is where you want to brainstorm. For example, So one other thing I forgot to mention. There's someone else who helped me appreciate the problem space versus solution space, and that's Scott Cook, the founder of Intuit. And when he had a group of product managers, he loved to ask a question and be like, hey, who's the biggest competitor to TurboTax? And you'd raise your hand, all eager beaver, and he'd pick on you, and he'd be like, tax cut. He's like, no, you're wrong. It's pen and paper. Because more Americans were doing their tax returns with pen and paper, right? So that's the other thing, is by understanding the problem space, you understand what are the true substitutes or alternatives for the customer, how they're getting those needs met, right? So what we want to do is start in the problem space, forget the solution space, and brainstorm what are all the different ways we can help people out. Compared to pen and paper, computers are great at math. They can help you check your taxes. That's one benefit they could do. Instead of printing it out and standing in line, you can e-file, right? File my taxes. It can ask you a bunch of questions on what you did this year and try to find ways to save you money on your tax bill with your deductions. It can actually analyze your return and reduce your audit risk, right? These are just 4 examples of customer benefit statements in the problem space. And your goal as your team is to brainstorm all those different ones and explore all the different parts of the problem space, right? And if you notice a well-written problem space statement, according that I like, they all start with, not the grammatical, they all start with a verb though, right? Check, file, maximize. It's because it's doing something for the user to create value. And secondly, it's written from the customer's perspective. My taxes, my deductions, my audit risk. It's not written from the company's perspective or the product's perspective. So it's kind of like, again, a well-written agile user story, right? And just to show it here, your job, again, is to peel the onion and brainstorm all the different things you could do in the problem space. We're not saying we're going to do them. There'll be plenty of time to evaluate them and say, that's dumb, we can't do that, that's too expensive later, right? Now, if you take my advice and you brainstorm a dozen different, say, benefits, dozens of benefits, the next question is, okay, now it's time to converge. How do we decide which ones we should go after, right? We need to prioritize these. And I would argue you want to prioritize based on customer value, and that just begs the question, great, how do we prioritize on customer value? And so I developed a framework called importance versus satisfaction to help figure out how well-served or underserved is the need as a way to figure out how much customer value it's going to create. So let me walk you through that real quick. On the horizontal axis, we have how important is the user need from low to high. And you can imagine this as a survey question where we ask thousands of people and ask them to rate it numerically and you get a real number. Or you can also think of it as just a thinking tool for your team, low, medium, high. It's totally fine either way, right? How important is a particular need? Someone said save time. On a scale of 1 to 10, how important is it to you to save time on your taxes? Someone else said save money. On a scale of 1 to 10, how important is it to save money? And different people are going to have different answers, right? And then on the horizontal axis, we have how satisfied are people with the current alternatives, how they're getting that need met. Again, low, medium, high, or you can think about it as a number. Let's divide it into 4 quadrants so we can talk about them. Bottom left quadrant, we have low importance of user need and low user satisfaction with current alternatives. Bottom right quadrant, we have low importance of user need and high satisfaction. At the end of the day, neither of these are really worth going after with your precious time and resources, right? Because you're fundamentally addressing a low importance need. And when people launch products that fail, it's because they thought it was important, but they didn't use the kind of customer research techniques to figure out that their target customer didn't think it was important. All right. In the upper right quadrant, we have a high importance of user needs, so that's better. But we also have high satisfaction, so yeah, it's an important need, but people are happy, pretty happy with how it's getting met today. That's the definition of a competitive market. And I'm not saying you can't go in a competitive market, but you hear people say you need to be 10x better. That's where you need to be 10x better. You can't just come out with a Me Too or 5% better product. The first product that comes to mind here is Google Internet Search. If I said to you, how important is it to find the information you're looking for online, it's usually pretty important. But it's not like people walk around going, gosh, I can't find a thing on Google. This doesn't work. It's hard, right? You may have to modify your query or go to page 2, but you'll find what you're looking for. It works pretty good, right? So that's a competitive market. The last quadrant, the upper left quadrant, high importance of user need and low satisfaction with current alternative. That's where opportunities lie, right? Because it's really important and people aren't happy with how it's getting done today. And they won't be there forever because we work in a competitive environment and innovative. Everyone else is trying to find these opportunities. But if you do the analysis the way, you will find some opportunities to address. The one that comes to mind for me is ride-sharing companies like Uber and Lyft, right? Especially in the SF. I remember when I used to live in SF, and I needed to get a taxi before these guys were around. And you'd call, hey, yeah, it'll be at your house. It'll be at your apartment in 20 or 30 minutes. 30 minutes later, no cab. Call back again. Oh, we'll send another one. I'm not sure what happened. We'll send another one, right? Did this happen to anybody back in the day, right? Or it'd show up late, it wouldn't show up, right? So you can imagine, again, conversely, if I said, hey, how important is it to get to your flight at SFO on time? It's pretty important. Or to get to that job interview or that date or whatever meeting you have. It's pretty important. And, you can imagine a high-level question where we said, how satisfied are you with the last 10 cab rides you took in SF? And you can break it down even, like how satisfied were you with, how promptly the person arrived? How clean was the car? How safe did you feel when they were driving? How polite were they? How easy was it to pay? You can imagine low satisfaction scores. So I think that's part of the unspoken reasons why these products are so successful, is they're fundamentally addressing an upper left quadrant need. And now if this all seems kind of theoretical or conceptual, let me show you some real data where we surveyed thousands of users, and we asked them to rate importance and satisfaction for 13 key features of our product. So now we've got importance here and satisfaction here. Instead of just low, medium, high, we actually have real numbers. And each of these dots is one of those 13 features plotted with where the data came out. The first thing I saw as the PM was this point. People were saying it's 100% importance, and we were getting 98% satisfaction. So first off, I was like, great job, team. Second thought was, I'm not going to spend any engineering resources on that because it's good to go. Let's go find bigger fish to fry. They're going to add more value, right? And we had a cluster of benefits here, and we had this one down here. But this one stuck out as the one that was the most up and to the left. And I didn't say it explicitly, but the closer it is to the upper left corner, the more underserved it is, basically, right? The more underserved the need is, right? And I was excited, I was mentioning this during the break, that a couple years after I created this framework, I came across a book called What Customers Want by Tony Olwick. And he had his own importance and satisfaction framework that was pretty similar to mine, some slight differences. And I was like, wow, okay, I think I'm onto something because he thinks about it too. He's actually one of the pioneers of jobs to be done. And a year ago, his Jobs to be Done, the little white book came out. So I recommend checking out. If the idea of getting quantitative about this stuff appeals to you, I'd recommend checking it out. All right, the last step I'm going to cover is defining your value proposition. Once we're clear on our target customer and what their underserved needs are, we want to get clear on, okay, which benefits are we actually going to deliver and how are we going to be better? And here's where I like to apply the Kano model. Who's heard of the Kano model here? Hey, more hands than problem states. Good. So actually, I studied lean manufacturing before I came to Silicon Valley, and I studied the Kano model in some of my classes, quality classes. So it also talks about user needs and satisfaction. What it does on the horizontal axis is it basically is about how fully does the product meet the particular need that we're talking about. From not at all, the product doesn't meet the need at all, to the product fully meets the need. And then on the vertical axis is, as a function of that, how much user satisfaction is created, right? From a lot of positive satisfaction to negative dissatisfaction. And if it seems kind of complicated, it boils everything into 1 of 3 categories, right? 3 categories of benefits or features. The first and easiest to understand is performance benefits. More is better, less is worse, right? So if we were building microprocessors, for example, and our chip was 10% faster than the other guys, that would be a performance benefit if someone else's was slower. So that's it, basically. The second category is must-haves. So having a must-have doesn't actually make anybody happy, but not having it makes it unhappy. Sticking with the car example, say I went looking for a new car, I went to the showroom, I loved the way it looked, and then I read the spec sheet on the window, and I really liked the specs, but then I peeked inside and saw it didn't have any seat belts. Right? I wouldn't buy it because I'd be afraid of getting hurt or dying. So seat belts are a must-have for a car. But if car A has 5 seat belts and car B has 100 seat belts, I don't say car B is 20 times better. Right? Once you have 1 seat belt per person, you flatten out. The third category is delighters. So not having a delighter doesn't cause any problems, but having a delighter can create a lot of positive value, right? Not today, but back in the day when the first cars came out with GPS navigation, it was a delighter. Before that, people were getting lost or printing out Google Maps, right? And then all of a sudden, you just put in your address and it changes how you drive. But as we know, more and more cars got GPS navigation over time. Garmin and TomTom came out with their devices, and now we just all use our phones. So this is not a static picture, right? The needs and features migrate over time, so that like yesterday's delighters become today's performance features, become tomorrow's must-haves. And the pace with which that happens just depends on the level of competition and innovation in your space. But what we want to do is use these 3 categories to come up with our value proposition, right? And our value proposition, again, is out of all the benefits that we evaluated, which ones are we actually going to say, hey, customers, our product does this for you, and more importantly, how are we going to be better? And so the way we put the Kano model to use is we create a grid, and you list 1 benefit per row, the must-haves, the performance benefits, the delighters. I've kept it generic here. The second step is you add a column for each of your key competitors and a column for your product. The next step is you score your competitors on these benefits, right? And if you're in something quantitative like microprocessor, you can put in a chip speed, but you can also just use low, medium, high. So let's say these are our competitive landscape, right? Both of these guys have the must-have. Competitor A is the best at this benefit. Competitor B is the best at this. They're both so-so here, and these guys have a delighter. This is the backdrop upon which we want to do our product strategy, right, and figure out how we're going to win, right? And we can't say we're going to be high on all of them. So given the situation, we might do something like this. Of course, we're going to have the must-have. We're going to do a little bit on this one. We're going to not worry about performance benefit 2, and we're going to try to be the best at performance benefit 3. Maybe we found a target market segment that really values that benefit, or maybe we have some ideas on how we can be better. And we have our own idea for a delighter. What matters the most is what's called your unique differentiators. Where are you going to outperform and where are you going to out-delight, basically, right? So those 2. That's what matters the most. And as you go into the next step of coming up with your MVP and then your UX design, you want to make sure you're clear on this so that your MVP has it in it. I just want to close out with 2 real-world examples.
The first, is it anyone use Instagram here? A few people, great. So let's look at it real quick through the Kano model eyes. Right, when they came out, there were already a bunch of other photo sharing apps that were out there, right? But all of a sudden, they skyrocketed and became number one. And I think it's because of their product strategy. What were the things, how did they outperform or outdelight the other photo sharing apps? Those of you remember back in the day, just yell out. Filters, yes. Is filters a solution or a problem? It's a solution, so we can use the 5 whys. Why do you like filters? What do they do for you? They make you feel good? Sure, hey. Yeah. What else? They make your pictures look better, right? So that would be the problem. So hey, it makes my picture look better. The solution is filters. Great. Anything else make your picture look better? There's one other little thing that makes your picture look better. The square aspect ratio. Remember when they first did it, everyone was annoyed. Like, why are you making my picture square, man? I want to. But then when they show up in a feed, you don't get the shrinking and the expanding going on, right? So both of those things help make your picture look better. Was that a delighter or a performance benefit? Delighter. So they had one delight, those delighters, and make your pictures look better. How about performance? How did they outperform the other photo sharing apps? Only photos. What else? Faster. They were faster, right? It took less time to upload, and it was because they did a UX hack, right? Everyone else, they waited. Back then, network speeds were slow, if you remember, on Wi-Fi, right? On cell phones. They would wait till you push the button, and you sit there and wait a few seconds, and it would go. They said, you know what? 90% of the time, people upload it. Let's just start uploading it the second the picture's done. And so then by the time you hit the button, it already a second or two had passed. You're like, whoa, these guys are so fast. I'm sure they had good compression and networking on the back end. So you guys did a great job. Let's throw that back into this framework, right? Here's other photo sharing apps. Here's Instagram. Must-haves. Obviously, let me share my photos is the must-have, right? We didn't talk about that. But performance benefit, post my photos quickly, low and high. And delighters, make my photos look good, supported by filters, right? I think that's the story. I don't know if they ever created that. That's the story of why. Last example, close out with, is Uber, right? And I love sharing real-world examples when I can. It's the 10th year anniversary of Uber, so one of their founders posted their slides. It used to be called Uber Cab. They dropped the cab. It used to be all about these black Mercedes cars, like high-end cars, right? They had iPhone, but don't worry, you BlackBerry guys. They had you covered, too. We got BlackBerry, too. We're good, right? They have a lot of slides in the pitch deck, but luckily there's one slide that I can extract the information we need to do the value prop exercise. Step 1, who are their competitors that they mention here? Cabs and car services. 2 competitors, right? Great. What benefits or problems do they call out? Yeah, there's a lot of stuff in here, right? In fact, they cover a bunch here, and then they kind of summarize here. Faster, cheaper, safer, nicer, safer. That could have been their tagline. Faster, cheaper, nicer, safer. You can see people walking around the company saying, that's how we're going to win, right? So we have the information we need here. I'm going to throw it into our grid. I'm going to rewrite faster, cheaper, nicer, safer with the way I like to call out customer benefits. Their competitors were taxis and car services, right? We can score the competitors, right? And I won't go through the details. This is where the competitors are weak, right? And that was their product strategy. Interestingly enough, originally, they were trying to basically match the car services on quality and be cheaper. They never, in the beginning, said they were going to be cheaper than taxis because they were going to have these Mercedes black cars. Over time, they eventually got to the point where they were cheaper than taxis. So anyway, this is an example of the performance, how they outperformed on those 4 dimensions. If we take a step back and add the must-haves, obviously take me where I want to go as a must-have, and I think they have some delighters about I can book without having to call, and I can see where the car is, right? So it's an example of, I think they're these winning products, and when you see winning products, they often have at least one performance benefit that they're the best on, and a delighter. So just some advice there. Summary, again, peeling the onion on your target customer and their needs and defining the problem space, figuring out what's underserved with importance and satisfaction, and using the Kano model to get clear on your value prop. Super fast, I want to mention this Thursday night, I run a Meetup, I mentioned. It's just meetup.com/lean-product. We have a director of Amazon Music coming on Thursday. If you want to check it out, it's down in Mountain View. Also, I've been consulting, and I recently expanded my team. I've added people, a senior PM director and senior director, so if you guys have anybody who needs consulting stuff, help, happy to chat with them. And then finally, I know I'm running a little over, so I'll just share this link, and I'm happy to answer questions during the break, and I'll ping the winners on Twitter, and happy to connect with you guys on LinkedIn. So thanks a lot. Appreciate it.